Hi, welcome to the Public Works Pipeline. I'm your host, Commissioner Mike McKeon. With me here is our Public Works Director, Paul McElhaney. And I'd like to welcome everyone to a special show today. We're going to go over some fall topics and some other sort of areas of interest. But before we get into the real nuts and bolts of this show, I wanted to talk about something very, very important. Former Ward 3 Commissioner Frank Lutz passed away in October of this year. And Paul, I think you knew him a bit more than I did. But what can you tell everybody about Frank?
Well, as you mentioned, Frank was Ward 3 Commissioner for 20 years. He was our predecessor. And he was Commissioner when I was a kid, for the most part, and was a pillar in the community. Everybody looked up to Mr. Lutz. Well-respected individual, did a lot for the community. And then when I became Commissioner, he was really a resource. He didn't tell you what to do or what you needed to do, but he was there to give advice on how you should approach things and ways to handle things. He was a great sounding board. Even though we had differences of opinion, that never interfered with that relationship. And he always, hey kid, how you doing, anything you need. But a phenomenal individual, and will sorely be missed by the community as a whole. And many of you may or may not know, but his daughter is also our township secretary. So it's even a greater loss for the township family as a whole, because we've lost someone so close.
Yeah, and I think that whole family's done so much to really shape the township the way it is now. And for those of you who don't know, Frank was a commissioner from 1976 to 1996, so 20 years. Paul, you're the commissioner from 2008 to 2018. You made it 10 years. I'm only making it 6 years. I'll be done at the end of this year. Actually, not quite 6 years. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Rocky Berto, who was the commissioner in between Frank and you. So Rocky was commissioner from 97 to about 2007.
Right, he did 12. So
yeah, my math's a little wrong.
Yeah, your math's a little off. You're the lightweight of the group. Yeah. But no, we've had, like I said, he's our predecessor. He left a legacy for us to hold up, and I think we've both done our part to try to do that.
All right. And now the main topic here, we're going to get into the fall and the leaves, because apparently they come down in the fall. So what kind of tips can you give residents about or explanation, I guess, about the leaf process?
The leaf process is simply put, first and foremost, do not rake your leaves to the curb. We do not pick it up. We do not pick them up from the curb. They create a accident hazard, and they also then get washed into the storm drains and create more work for us to clean up. Leaves are to be bagged in the brown paper bags that are recyclable. They can be bought at our transfer station, much cheaper than you can at the Home Depots and the Lowe's and all those areas, but they are available at our transfer station. Please place them curbside. Staff normally tries to pick them up same day as collection, as your regular refuse collection. But due to the volume of leaves, a lot of times we're unable to do that. So leave your bags there curbside, and staff will get to them as quickly as possible. If your bag is contaminated, if it has rocks or dirt or anything of that nature, it will be thrown out with the regular trash. So please make sure that your leaf bags have leaves, small brush, no contaminants, no grass, no yard waste, stones, dirt, or anything of that nature.
Right, because then if it's small shrubs, tree trimmings, leaves, all that can get composted. So that goes
Correct.
down to the Waverly site. One other thing to mention too, burning, right? It is illegal to burn leaves, branches, or people in Lower Merion Township. So please don't do any of that. Correct.
Yeah, it's frowned upon. Fire marshal will come out and visit, and will ticket if you're not doing it properly.
All right, and I just had a couple sort of resident tips too about leaf raking and that process. First, biggest tip, don't watch behind the gavel. Oh, actually, sorry, that's a different list here. Another tip, actually, you can rake your leaves as few as one time per fall. Let everything collect. It's all out there, and rake away and get rid of it, depending on the volume of leaves you have.
Well, and there's also a school of thought, many people believe, compost them. mulch them in your own yard, fertilize your own grass, leave them. Run a mulching lawnmower across them and leave them for next year to help give nutrients to your lawn.
And I'd say too, even after you rake the leaves, you could go over with a mower, because there's going to be remnants there, and you can make. I think that would turn into like organic mulch by bringing the mower through it.
Correct. Correct.
And I would just recommend too. Gas-powered leaf blowers. The township is looking into an ordinance for a possible ban. That's something coming down the road, in a year or two. I think we'll see. But if you're going to invest in machinery, it would be better to buy an electric-powered leaf blower, because I don't know where the future will be for the gas-powered blowers. Gas-powered blowers are loud. They're not good for the environment. So there's a lot of reasons to not get them. But the Noble rake is a good, just as good a way to get rid of leaves. And one thing to remember, that those bigger plastic rakes, they're wider, they bring in more leaves. So if you have a bigger, wider rake, it makes your job go a little more quickly.
Well, if you have some spare time, you want to come over with the Noble rake to my house, you're more than welcome.
I could send my kids over maybe.
No. I think you and I could bond a little more.
All right. Well, and also though too, like you said, you may not want to rake the leaves because of the natural, with the lawn. It's good for the insects and the wildlife and everything.
Sounds like you're trying to get out of helping. Sound like my son now.
Right. All right, so it's Halloween-ish time.
Yes.
Pumpkins. Aside from maybe throwing a pumpkin at a stranger, which is not a good way to dispose of a pumpkin, what would be a good way to dispose of a pumpkin?
Pumpkins go in with your regular trash. We do leaf composting. We don't achieve the temperatures and all for the breakdown of the pumpkins, so they get thrown out with your normal trash. Or again, if you have a vegetable garden or a flower garden, compost them at home. Use the nutrients that they provide for next year's spring plantings.
All right, and then we talked about leaves, but the leaves, they come from trees, usually. In terms of responsibility for trees, a homeowner may not understand what the right-of-way is. How does that work out legally? Who's responsible for what for a tree?
Well, before we jump on that, just a reminder, we do here at the Township Building, over at Building Planning, we do sell composting barrels. So if you want to do some composting at home, they are available for a small fee. Right-of-way trees. So essentially, from the center line of the road, so many feet onto each individual's property is the right-of-way. It's the road donated by or designated by each property owner for the benefit of the general public, so that utilities can be put in, sewer, storm sewer, telephone poles. That's how we get our power, our electric, and all those type of things. So any tree that falls within that given distance from the center line of the road is a right-of-way tree, and that tree is maintained by the Township of Lower Merion. The homeowners are not allowed to remove or trim those trees without express written permission from the Shade Tree Department or the Shade Tree Committee. So we as Township have a staff that goes out and trims those for safety and maintains them for safety. If a tree needs to be removed, we will then remove it, and we will ask the homeowner if we can then replant a tree in its replacement to keep our canopy at its level, or we'll ask if we can plant several to enhance the canopy within the township.
And the Shade Tree Commission, I think, is pretty unique in that it is a volunteer advisory board of township residents, yet they actually have jurisdiction over all of these trees. A lot of times these are just merely advisory boards, but if you think about how much sort of authority the Shade Tree Commission has, it's kind of a little staggering. I think it's about 70,000 trees, right?
Correct. They have the authority over those trees. We have a board certified arborist. He's like the Babe Ruth with all certifications and everything. You can't get any higher of a rating with him, but he'll defer to them on removals and stuff when a resident comes and asks. If our arborist declines it, then they can appeal to the Shade Tree Commission, and they have final authority on that. Their task is really to offer advice to the Board of Commissioners on right-of-way tree issues and trees within parks. Those that are in the public right-of-way and those that are within parks.
Right, and they'll also identify, these are the types of trees that should be planted. Here are invasives that we shouldn't be planting in the right of way.
Most of that's been identified and has been an ongoing list that the township arborist works from. And yes, he will, try to, he tries to make sure no invasives are planted or anything of that type. But he's tasked with, are there utilities underground? Are there wires overhead? If there's wires overhead, what can I plant? So with each new tree planted, he has to do inspections, or his assistant, to decide exactly what gets planted where.
Yeah, given all the authority the Shade Tree Commission has, I would never expect a member of the Shade Tree Commission to show up at a township meeting and ask for even more authority. So.
Well, unfortunately, there are state laws that dictate what the powers of the township are, what we can and cannot do on private property, and we have to be careful that we as a township and township staff don't meander into where we're not supposed to, and township staff is also responsible to make sure that none of the volunteer committees meander past that. And again, most of the tasks that are assigned to those committees and all are dictated by what state law and township ordinances, like the first class township code says.
All right, we just have about a minute before we wrap up segment one here. Are there any other fall issues that are on Public Works' radar?
For us, we're prepping for the winter. This is where we make sure all the plow equipment's running, all the salt spreaders are running, that our salt silos are full with salt, and we get ready and hope that we have a winter like last year.
All right, well, please stick around. We're going to start back up with our winter forecast and some other Public Works issues when we come back from the break. Hi, and welcome back to the Public Works Pipeline. I'm Commissioner Mike McKeon here with Public Works Director Paul McElhaney, and we're going to just jump right out with our winter weather forecast. This is a new feature, and probably the only time we're going to do this feature, but we were looking at some stuff online and looking at some projections here, and the past few winters that we've had have been pretty balmy, right? Not a lot of, little or no snowfall. I think in 2022 to 2023, it was about 1/3 of an inch of snowfall, and the average snowfall before that was about 2 feet per year. It's looking closer to about 1.5 to 2 feet for this year, coming back again. I know some people complain that the temperature's getting warmer every year. It's never going to snow again. Public Works should just get rid of all of its snow plows and snow trucks. But you got to remember, snow, right? That's a combination of precipitation and cold weather. So if you have a dry winter, even if it's very cold, there may not be a lot of snow. But if it's a wet winter, even if it's kind of a warmish winter, warm and wet, you can still get a fair amount of snow, and that's what I think we'll see this year.
I agree. I think it's going to be a wet year. What we also, one of our biggest concerns is ice. We may not get any accumulation, but we're in a region where most of our storms start out with some type of wet precipitation beforehand. And we have to be very careful that we don't get those flash freezes and those type of things where we have that layer of ice. It can be challenging. So that's one of our things that we're always watching out for, is that ice pre-storm and after storm. But I think we are in for a wet winter. This is the time of the year where we start getting all the equipment lined up. In the next couple of weeks, you may see township trucks driving around with plows and so forth on the front of them. We have a lot of new employees. They have to get used to driving those vehicles with that plow on the front. Changes the whole dynamic of how the vehicle handles, but also how you have to take corners and get around traffic. Plus, they also have to get familiar with their routes, where they put the snow, those type of things. So, that's the bad part of not having snow for several years, is that your staff doesn't, your newer staff doesn't get that training. So we're getting ready to start that right now.
And if there is a storm too, the roads are prioritized, right?
Correct.
How does that work?
We have a 1, 2, 3 system. So priority ones are those roads that are essential. the roads that are from fire stations, for hospitals, those type of things where emergency services need to get through. Then you get into your secondary roads, which are some of your less busy streets that lead into areas, and then the last is again your tertiaries, your threes, or like your cul-de-sacs and those type of things. Now, what will occur is if we're in the middle of a storm and we've moved into our secondary roads, but the storm picks up, we go back and we'll be working on our main roads. If we receive a call, because we have a command center, we're in communication with emergency services, the police during the entire time of emergency event. If, say, there was an emergency at a home that was located on a cul-de-sac, we will receive a call from the police dispatch. They'll tell us that. We'll immediately send staff over to plow and clear the area so that emergency teams can get into that area immediately. So it's not as if they're on their own, but we will respond as needed to those secondary and third roads if an emergency occurs, if we're not there already.
All right, and one thing that residents should be seeing before we get to that winter weather is the solid waste fund bill, right? How does that work?
Well, before we get to that, just remember, folks, that we return roads to winter driving conditions, which means you're not going to see curb to curb perfectly black. It's to get the roads open and drivable again, and then we'll clean up from there. And it can take numerous hours after the snow stops for us to get it done. We have 280 some miles of road to pave. Plow. Think of how long it takes you to shovel your sidewalk, let alone we have that many miles of road to plow and sidewalks to shovel on top of it. Solid waste fee. Again, the board had a long discussion about the solid waste fee. This is the fee that each resident who utilizes Lower Merion trash pickup pays to dispose of their trash. It's set up in such a way that the fund, it's an independent fund, the residents who use it, their fee covers the entire cost of that fund. So nobody is supplementing each other, and you pay for what your use is. And there's three levels of service, and you pick your level. You'll be getting it shortly, and this provides you with trash pickup once a week, provides you with recycling every week, switching weeks as to what's picked up, and all the free events that occur, the free dump weekends, your leaf cleanup, those type of things.
And you said there's three sizes. So there's the mini can version, right? Then there's this, I guess they call it the standard, that's 1 to 2 cans, and then the third version is the 3 to 4 can.
Correct. That's the enhanced.
Enhanced, right?
Yes.
So the fees for this past year were $255 for a mini, $380 for standard, and enhanced was $530. We're projecting 10% increases for each one of those. So the mini goes to $281. Standard goes to $418, and enhanced goes to $583. Now, some people may say, well, I'm a senior on a fixed income. What can I do to save money? Well, if you're on a fixed income and you're paying standard, and you can get away with a mini can, buy a cheap mini can, and your subscription will go down from $418 to $281 this year, and then going forward, you'll be saving probably over $100 or more a year on it.
Just a reminder, your cans cannot exceed 50 gallon and can't weigh over 50 pounds. That's to protect staff.
Because they have to lift them.
They have to lift, or they have to pull it all out. So please don't throw your trash in there without it being bagged in some way, so that staff can just grab the bags if the can's too heavy.
And you also do audits. So if someone says, oh, well, I'm doing standard and I don't want to pay for standard, so I'm going to do mini next year, but they're leaving 2 regular trash cans out, that's going to get caught, right?
Yeah, what'll happen is staff will leave a non-compliance. If we leave 2 or more, we report it to the office, who will then move your subscription level up to the appropriate level, and you will be billed for that difference. So yes, we do keep an eye on it.
And this year, there's been a heck of a lot of paving, especially sort of in our area, our part of the township around Conshohocken State Road, Penn Valley, Ballard Kenwood, Belmont Hills, and that's going to lead into a lot of paving for next year, right?
Well, you said a lot of paving. There's been a lot of utility work.
Yeah. I meant to say a lot of utility
you were on the hopeful side that we got paved. Yes, there's been a lot of utility work. A lot of it's carried on for several years because one utility, then the next utility. So next year's paving is going to be rather large. It's going to encompass a lot of the eastern end of the township, a lot of, and then a lot of different areas, but a large section of the eastern end of the township will be done. So staff is currently diligently working while we have good weather to make repairs to inlets and prep for that paving for next year. We are doing our best to control the utilities and trying to keep things flowing. It is very difficult at times to do so.
And the utility work, that's done at the behest of the utilities. They're saying if it's Aqua or Pico, this is essentially emergency work because these mains, this is old stuff that has to get repaired before something happens. And unfortunately, it causes all sorts of traffic bottle ups. And I think Public Works has done an excellent job of trying to make sure that there are access points for the communities, because it seems to me, from my perspective, that sometimes when the road work is scheduled, if it's the utility companies, their contractors, PennDOT, whomever, they're not really taking into consideration the overall impact on everyone who lives there.
Correct. We've run into occasion where the same company may have crews working in one general area. They apply for a permit for a PennDOT road and not realizing that's their detour route. And then we as staff have to catch that and control that. One of the misconceptions everybody has is that we control the utilities. We have no say over the utilities in saying they can't have a permit. They've got a lot of infrastructure to make replacement of. They're doing so. We do our best to try to coordinate with them and try to keep things flowing, but you do run into occasion where they close roads without proper notification, because they run into issues, or they just, as we put it, become cowboys. So it can be a handful. Before coming here this morning for the taping, I was on the phone for about a half an hour with one of the subcontractors, speaking sternly to them and trying to control their action.
Yeah, because I think a lot of residents assume that it's township workers that are doing this, and these are contractors for the utility companies, and they a lot of times basically want us to just get out of their way so they can do what they think has to get done.
If they had their way, you literally would have every road torn up, I think. I have 3 staff members that spend all day doing inspections, chasing, controlling, adjusting, sending out notifications. It is a monumental task at times.
And I'll just note on my end, this has been the worst year for it that I can remember. I know there's always a little bit of road work, construction, but for some reason the floodgates were kind of open this year.
Well, I mean, they are trying to improve and replace the majority of the infrastructure, both electrical through Pico and gas and water within the township. So unfortunately, their infrastructure is older. We are, as I put it, the generation that has to live through that upgrade and change. But I keep looking at that for that light at the end of the tunnel, where we'll be back to, okay, there's one road opening because there's a new service being put in or there was a leak, as opposed to entire neighborhoods being torn up because they're putting in brand new infrastructure.
Yeah, that's what I think was kind of surprising to me, was that it's not just one street or one part of a street, it's everything there.
It's everything.
I was hoping to talk about the budget and the CIP, but I rambled too much about some other things. But the budget, just so everybody knows, November 8th, 2023, proposed budget presentation. November 15th, 2023, the first public hearing on the proposed budget. November 29th, 2023 will be the second public hearing on the proposed budget. And if we get all our ducks in a row as a board and get everything ready to go, on December 13th, 2023, we will vote on whether to adopt the 2024 budget and approve the CIP, capital improvement plan, which would be 2024 through 2029. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. This was the penultimate Public Works show that I'll be hosting. I may be back next month for one last time to be brought through the ringer, but I appreciate everyone checking out the show today.